Welcome to my Formula One power rankings. Today I will rank the 20 drivers of the Formula One grid after the Belgium Grand Prix 2025. And starting with Franco Colapinto in P20, where he stayed compared to the last rankings. He had a quiet weekend, no crashes or mistakes, but also no real highlights. And I think his F1 career right now is in real danger. Needs to score good results in the next races to be even considered for a 2026 cockpit. P19 Yuki Tsunoda also stayed there compared to the last rankings. Probably his best Red Bull weekend. He didn't score because of miscommunications with the team, considering the pit stop, but his quali pace was promising. He needs to build on that. P18 Gabriel Bortoleto, also no changes in the rankings. He finished P9 in sprint and main race in probably his strongest weekend in F1 so far. Outqualified Nico Hülkenberg in both quali sessions again, and he pitted later than Hülkenberg and ended up behind him after the pit stops, but he was the faster driver and therefore he could pass him after the team instructed Nico to let him pass. Could also manage the tires better than Hülkenberg, so he could make the strategy work, and if he performs like this he will climb the rankings pretty soon. P17 Lance Stroll, and he lost 3 places compared to the last rankings, and he did not even perform particularly bad, even ahead of his teammate. I think in one of the races was P20 in quali and probably had a better strategy than Alonso, but this weekend was not his fault. He didn't make any mistake. The Aston Martin was just slow. P16 Oliver Behrmann, who stayed there compared to the last rankings. He finally scored points again in the sprint race with P7, but was behind his teammate in P5. And in the main race he finished his 4th consecutive P11. Had technical issues with his power unit, so yeah, he had to manage quite a lot. But overall I think a promising weekend for him. The same goes to P15, which is Liam Lawson, climbed 2 places in the rankings. He was outqualified I think twice by Hadjar, but was not that far off. Sprint was solid, got no points, but it was a solid race from him. In the main race he finished P8 ahead of his teammate, who of course got his problems. And surely but slowly he is overcoming his downgrade of form after his downgrade from Red Bull, showing again what a capable driver he can be. P14, Carlos Sainz gained a place compared to the last rankings. He had a solid sprint with P6 and finally backed points again after a few difficult weekends. And then he did a setup change for the main quali, which went wrong. And then he changed, I think, the setup again for a wet setup and got stuck in DRS trains basically. But I think his sprint performance and Albon's race performance showed the car's potential, and the weekend in general was a step in the right direction, and he's expected to progress even further in the second half of the season. P13, Kimi Antonelli lost a place compared to the last rankings. Really bad weekend for him and the team. He had 2 Q1 exits in the sprint and the race qualifying. And as good as his start of the year was for a rookie, the second quarter of the season was a bit concerning, except for maybe Canada. And I think also they went in the wrong direction with the car development, so they have to look into it, and Antonelli needs to learn as much as he can. P12 Fernando Alonso lost 2 places to the last rankings, and basically this is the same story as with Lance Stroll. The Aston Martin was pretty bad this weekend, especially over 1 lap pace. They need to look into it, and he basically tried to change to a rain setup, but with the long delay there was not much running in the rain, so this was not the right call. P11, Pierre Gasly climbed up 2 places in the rankings. He showed a great performance in the sprint qualifying, but the water leak didn't let him perform in the sprint. He bounced back in the main race with pitting at the right lap, building a train behind him afterwards because of his low downforce setup, and it was the only chance for him to score points, which he did. He earned a point because Hülkenberg boxed again. P10 Esteban Ocon, who climbed up 1 spot compared to the last rankings. He had an amazing sprint qualifying and therefore also an amazing sprint result with P5, got 4 points there for his team. And as his teammate, he went for the rain setup, which was not the right call. maybe Haas should have splitted the cars, one maybe more downforce, one lower downforce setup, but nevertheless he stayed out too long, and he also got a used tire for his dry stint, which was a bit weird, and I think he didn't understand himself after the race. In summary, great sprint, mediocre main race. P9 Lewis Hamilton stayed there compared to the last rankings, and I think he would have dropped places without his main race performance. I think both quali sessions have been horrible. He gained the most places in the tricky part of the race and made exactly the right calls, showing his great experience. But in general, he was far off his teammate, and I have to say again, so he needs to look into this. P8 stays Isaac Hadjar, and I think 3 out of the 4 competitive sessions this weekend were great. He got a point in the sprint, but he had issues unfortunately in the race with his car, which made him drop quite a lot. I think in the end he finished P20, and he is on a streak of bad luck recently, needs some clean weekends. P7 Nico Hülkenberg, also no changes compared to the last rankings. He showed his new quali weakness in both qualifyings again, needs to look into this, and he didn't progress in the sprint, but made a good call in the main race, changing to the dry, and he gained a lot of places there, but this led to his teammate passing him, and then he changed the tires again, which was maybe also not the right call, because he lost track position and was stuck in the Gasly DRS train. Was his worst weekend in a while, but yeah, I think he scored a lot of points recently, so he should be fine. P6 Alex Albon, he lost 1 place compared to the last rankings, but not due to his own performance. I think just another person performed a bit better, and he had his issues in the sprint qualifying and could not progress in the sprint. He had car issues, was not a performance issue, but he fought back with a brilliant qualifying with P5 in the main qualifying, and in the race he only had to let Russell go and finish P6 and finished P6. He could keep Hamilton behind the entire dry stint, and that's the car which finished on the podium, of course, with Charles Leclerc. And again, he scored the most points out of the midfield, like so many races before this season. P5 is Charles Leclerc, who gained 1 place compared to the last rankings, and he had exactly the weekend he needed after Silverstone. Maximized his sprint with P4, had no chance of keeping Lando behind, and he did a strong quali lap on Saturday and had a good setup for a pretty much dry race, but still it's impressive that he could keep Verstappen behind, especially in the rain. So yeah, P5 again for Charles Leclerc. P4 George Russell, no changes here. Also, the sprint qualifying showed how bad the Mercedes is at the moment. Bounced back in the main qualifying, and afterwards he maximized the result with P5. And in the moment it seems like he will stay at Mercedes, so he can only hope that the car is getting better and especially more consistent next year with the new rules. P3 Max Verstappen did an amazing sprint performance, showed his extra class and kept the McLaren behind, but I think he left something on the table for the qualifying, cost him a podium potentially, and he was pretty vocal about race control delaying for too long, obviously because it made his setup choice wrong again. P2, Lando Norris, also no changes here. He had a good bounce back in qualifying with pole after he was so far back in the sprint qualifying, but he made too many small errors. Even if he had this battery issue they were talking about, he went too early at the restart, messed up turn 1, and this ended up the reason why Piastri could pass. Also after this he made a few mistakes trying to catch him, so in the end it's not the end of the world, but he needs to bounce back quickly from that to gain back his momentum in the championship fight. P1 Oscar Piastri, he got beat by Verstappen in the first lap in the sprint. He got revenge by passing Norris for the lead in the main race at pretty much the only opportunity. Showed great tire management on the mediums at the end, and I think this weekend showed why he's the championship leader and the favorite to win it all. These were my driver rankings. We will rank teams and drivers again after Hungary. I hope you enjoy the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend, and see you guys soon.